No, it's actually oh, thank you, Joanne. All right. So we're writing equations. I'll pause here for a minute, let you guys finish copying that, and we'll talk about what that means and why we're doing it. So today, I'm going to present 3 different types of problems to you. One way I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a graph. I'm going to say, okay, now tell me what the equation of that line is. That's one way we can do it. Another thing that we can do is I can just give you 2 random points and say, okay, what equation, what line would go through those 2 points? And then the third way, which I don't think we'll get to, but I'm kind of putting it off until the end, because even if we don't get to it, technically, if you can do the first 2, you should be able to do the last one, is if you have a slope and 1 point. That's enough information to get you a line. So we're turning data into equations. So why would we want to do that? It'll make more sense on our next lesson when we start doing word problems. But basically, in mathematics and real life, we start with data, right? And we turn that data into equations. Why? Because equations are like machines where you can plug in a number and get an answer out, right? So you take your data, turn it into an equation. Now you have an equation that can help you predict any outcome you want. Okay, so that's why we like equations in mathematics. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off by looking at a graph. So when you guys graph this on your paper, what is important is that you get a couple of these points right. So let me show you which ones you want to get. I pushed the wrong button. There we go. Let's make sure we get these 2 correct. That's at 4 and 4. Okay. So I'll pause there while you guys are graph. Here we go. What do you like the numbers? You want to know that these are the 4s at least, I think. So let's go do it. So yes, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the numbers on there. Now some people have trouble with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause again. I'm going to let you guys try to write the numbers in there, okay? That way you can see how well you're doing with that. So go ahead and fill in the blanks with the numbers of those 2 points. And what did you get for this one, Chris? Yeah. So remember, x comes first and then y. So in this one, the x value is 0, the y is 4. Over here, the x is 4, the y is 0. I was right. I thought the bottom was This is correct. All right. So now we're going to find the equation of a line. So I'm going to give you guys some steps you can kind of go through to navigate your way through this. So step 1 is you want to find your slope. All right, so we want to find the slope, right? Now, we've done this before, haven't we? So I'll use a card, but if you don't know, it's okay. I'll take a volunteer. So, because it's been a little while. Kendall, do you remember how to find slope? Okay. Cool. Kind of that works. Do you have the answer yet? You're close. That's all right. Yeah? Say that again? Oh, you already got the whole answer? You're too far ahead of us. You're right, though. You're good. Kendall, what's the last name again? All right. Then Micah. Gotcha. Okay. So here's what we learned in class, though. Okay, just if you guys remember stuff from Algebra 1, go with it if you're strong with that. Here's what I taught y'all. I taught you this. Remember this? Right? So to do that, we need to start by labeling our points, right? So let's do that. Let's label our points. Is this an X or a Y? X. The first one's always an X, right? And we'll call this set the 1s, eh? And we'll call these sets the 2s. Okay? That's the Canadian in me. No, I'm joking. All right, so here we go. y2 is what? Hola. Y2 is minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what do we got? Which is kind of what you said, Kendall, but there's a negative, right? And so it's going to be -1 is my slope, right? So that's from lesson 1.2. All right, so that's step 1, is to find your slope. Okay. Step 2 is we want to find our y-intercept. What's our y-intercept? There, right? That's kind of nice. I'll just draw an arrow there. So my y-intercept is 4, where it touches the y-axis. The y-intercept, we use the letter B for it, right? So B equals 4. And then step 3, write your equation. Ready? So it's y equals mx plus b, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to replace these two things with what we found in step 1 and 2. So what was our m? -1. And what was our b? 4. There you go. Do we need to really write the 1? No. You could actually just put -x plus 3. Okay? So that's our 3-step process for finding the equation of the line. You're going to find your slope formula, right? Find your y-intercept, which in this case you can just tell by looking. Step 3, you can write your equation. Okay? Let's do another one together real quick. Whoa, whoa. All the time. You good? You know me already. Nice job. I don't know how many are on there, Henry. I don't know how many are on there. Okay. Here's another one. So so this time let's make sure that we have the 2 points that I can see are this is a good point, right? And so is this. So let's go ahead and get these points correct. What's this point here?
-2, 2. Oh, I forgot to extend my. Oh, okay, this drives me nuts.
How about this one?
-5, 0. Oh my.
Okay, so now that we've got the points right, go ahead and draw your graph. Make sure you get those points correct. The rest of it's kind of, Whew. A couple of you guys are still forgetting to look at the little notes that I put sometimes, not always, but sometimes on homework, where I tell you to only do a certain number of problems.
I never looked at the eye for God.
So you're doing more work than you have to.
Well, I mean, I also did more, but then I just had to check 8, 9, and 10, so I just didn't do it. And I didn't do 9.
Yeah, so you didn't need to do 8, 9, or 10. That was the... Okay, let's, now if I don't put a note on the homework, that means do it all. But if you see a little note on the Google Classroom, that means only do those ones. Oh, I was recording that whole time. Cool. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to ask you guys to help me out. So Annie, what's step 1? Did you write it down? What did you write for step 1 last night? Probably. What does it say? I can't see. Oh, you didn't write a sentence for step 1? Okay, so you might want to write it this time. Hannah, what would you have us put? You want to find the slope. So find the slope is the first step. Okay. And then my next question is going to go to Leslie. Leslie, how do we find the slope? Mm-hmm. You're good. So I'm going to change what she's saying, but she's saying the right thing. She's telling me to use the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So you got to label these, right? So we'll call this I'll call these the 1s and these the 2s. The way you were telling me, Leslie, you were making these the 2s. That's fine. It will still work. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and plug them in. So Paris, I've called this x2, y2. I've labeled them there, and then x1 and y1. So let's plug them into this formula here. What would I have? So what goes here? What letter goes here, Paris? Yeah, like from up here. Which of those? Y2, right? So we want Y2 there. Now, which one of these, kind of hard to see, which one of these did I label as Y2? Which one? Can't see. Yeah, it's this guy here, -2. So that's what's going to go there. Minus Y1. Can you tell what Y1 is? Close. -5, right? Now here's the thing. We have a minus, right? We have a minus, a -5. So you have double negatives, right? So watch out for that. All right. I'm going to give Paris a break, and I'm going to ask Micah, would you help me with the bottom? So what goes here? I need to write bigger. So x2 is 2 minus x1, which is 0. All right, let's go ahead and simplify this up here a little bit. Take a minute and simplify that, you guys. I'll call on you in a second to share out your findings with me. All right, Kiara, what do you think? I agree. I agree. There you go. So there's our slope. All right, so I finished step 1, Alicia. What's next? Find that y-intercept. Now, guys, when you're doing your homework, you don't have to write your steps out. Like I'm just doing this for your notes right now. Okay. All right. LaFontaine, what is the y-intercept? I agree. It's -5 because that is where it touches the y-axis, right? And so last step, Hannah, what's my last step? Write the equation. So if I wanted to write that equation, I shall ask Nelson, what's the equation? Cool. There you go. So there's your 3-step process. Bueno? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have you guys do one. I don't like that one very much. I like that one. I'm going to give you the 2 points. So this point is left 1 up 2. And this point is 0, -4. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and find me the equation of that line. Give you a few minutes. Student practice 1, yeah. Thank you for asking. Let me label that. There you go. That's right. Okay, so I don't know how you guys labeled yours, but I'll call those the 1s. I'll call these the 2s. And so if you set it up like that, you would get the following. Double negatives become positive. That makes 1. -4 take away 2 is -6. There's your slope. Had a few people ask some questions about the second step. Second step is to find your y-intercept. So John, what's our y-intercept? John Chavez. That's right. The y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis, right? So once you've got your y-intercept, you've got your slope, you're ready to write that equation. So
No.
So, Adrian, what was your last name? Oh, huh? So you're Canizales. Okay, Adrian Canizales. What's the equation then? That's right. All right, guys. So there you go. Okay. Now here's the thing. What is the easiest part about this problem?
The B.
I think the B is the easiest. That's my opinion. Because you just look at it, right? The y-intercept right there. All right. Don't you guys agree, though, that it's possible that I give you a problem like this, where it goes off the paper, and so this is basically what you would see on your paper is this. You think that's possible?
Yeah.
That is possible. It's just not drawing you all the way down to the place where it touches, so you can't tell. It has a y-intercept, you just can't see it. So there's another way to find the y-intercept, which I'm going to share with you. Yeah.
I was saying.
You are right, and that's what we're going to do next. So to kind of help you understand how to find your y-intercept without looking at a graph, because that can happen, is I'm going to show you guys, okay, I'm going to give you 2 points but no graph. And I'm going to show you how you can find that y-intercept. The slope part is exactly the same. Nothing changed there. But find that y-intercept is a little bit different. So go ahead and write this down here. This is example, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Here we go. Let's do it. Step 1 is the same. Step 1 is find your slope. So let's do it. All right, so I'm going to call this x and y, x and y. Call the first pair the 1s. We'll call the second pair the 2s. And we're ready to calculate our slope up. Okay, what's y2? Minus y1 over x2 minus x1.
I'm so confused. Hold on. Because you just messed my mind. Okay, it's -2, right? Okay, and it's -2 y2. Wouldn't that would be behind the 5?
No. Why is it right?
I feel so dumb right now. I don't know why.
No, it doesn't matter. I could have labeled this as the 2s and these as the 1s,
So then this one.
and it would be reversed, but you'd still get the same answer.
Oh, yeah, now I see it.
What's
no,
Yes, it'd be
because you
five.
get positive stuff.
It'd be five.
They all
plus
have
two
one. You just have to find it.
over -5.
Okay, now this time we're not looking at a graph, so you can't really see where it crosses the y-axis. Now some of you out there, some of you guys are pretty smart out there and you already know what it is. And I don't want you to talk. I want you to be quiet. I want you to pretend not to see it. Okay? No.
No, can you help me explain to him that -7/5 is the same as 7/5?
Continue. So now I'm going to show you guys a new way to find the y-intercept without graphing it, okay? So, here you go. So I'm going to write this question. If you don't know the answer, you should probably write it. The question is, how do you find the y-intercept when you can't see it on the graph? How do you find the y-intercept? Make your notes useful to you.
We get it.
Okay. So how do you find the y-intercept when you can't see it on the graph? That's the question. Yes.
You substitute in everything, and so it would be the y coordinate equals the slope times the x coordinate plus b.
There you go. So she's right. So what we're gonna do then is you're gonna, John, shh, just watch. We have y equals mx plus b, right? Now, we have our slope already. What's my slope? So I'm going to replace this m with -7/5, right? Now, don't we also have an x up there somewhere? Give me an x that we have up there. Okay, so let's go with the 0, right? And what's the y value that goes with that 0? 5. Can we solve for b? That's what we do. So you plug in your x. You plug in x, y, and m, and then you solve for b. Okay? So plug in an x, y, and m, solve for b. Now somebody might ask, well, wait a minute. What if I use this point? What if I plugged in 5 for x and -2 for y? It will still work. You'll get the same answer. Okay? So you could pick either one. I like that this person chose 0 because what's 0 times that? It's just 0, right? So we don't really even need it. I'll scribble it out there. So what's b? There's your b. And therefore I know my equation. My equation is y equals, what's my slope? And my y-intercept? Okay, now Hannah knew what the y-intercept was, though, at the very beginning without doing all of this. How did you know, Hannah? She remembered that when you have a y-intercept, what's the x value?
0.
So this one kind of turned out, I actually don't like that. I wish that wasn't there because that made it easier than I wanted it to be. But yeah, you can actually see the y-intercept here if you're sneaky about it. But this method works for anything. Even if I didn't give you this point, I give you a different one, you could still do this. And that's what I want you guys to know. So you're going to plug in, how do you find your y-intercept if you can't see it on the graph? The answer is plug in 3 things. Plug in an x, a y, and an m. Okay? And from there, you should be able to find the b, which is your y-intercept. All right, let's do another one real quick. So, let's try some more and see if we can get your question answered. I really don't like these questions. There we go. Let's do this one. Go ahead and write down this one real quick for me, those 2 points. This is what I call a guided practice, where I'm going to let you guys do the work, but we'll do it as a class step by step. I do. That's how I do it. Okay, so 3 equals what?
3 equals -2/3.
Uh-huh.
And instead of it being x, in parentheses 1
Mhm.
plus e, but I don't know how to solve it.
So we don't know how to solve it from here. So first of all, that's 1 over 1, right? So you multiply the tops together. 2 times 1 is 2.
Well, how did you get 1 over 1?
That's what 1 is. Okay.
Well, you have to make it a fraction, right? Okay, gotcha.
Okay, now this part probably is confusing to a few of you guys. If you know how to do it, go with what you know. But if you don't know how to do it, I'll show you how to do it. So here's our question. How do we do this? Well, what you do is I would say multiply everything by the bottom number. That's how I do it. Multiply everything by the bottom number. So what's my bottom number? Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to multiply that by 3, this by 3, and this by 3.
And well, if it's just
So,
b,
let me teach, and I'll take questions just a second. So what's 3 times 3? 9. And then here, this is 3 over 1, right? So what would this be if I multiplied straight across? Close.
3. Wait, okay, hold on.
Negative 6 over 3. Plus,
Oh, wait. No, can't you factor it though?
we'll get there. 3 times b. Okay. Now, this simplifies. What does that become? Negative 2. So that's how I deal with my fraction. Is if you multiply everything by the bottom number, you end up with no more fraction. Then do what you're comfortable with. And if you're not comfortable with anything, then I would say go ahead and go with this strategy. All right, and from here, we should be good to solve. So I'm out of space, so I'm going to bring it up here. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and add 2.
To 9.
That looks kind of familiar, Nathan. Is that what you had?
Yeah, just missed the
Weird one intercept. All right, so let me ask another question then. How about Natalie? Natalie, what would our equation be then?
So 2 over 3x plus oh, 11 over 3.
Mm-hmm. Weird, right? There it is. All right, so we can't. That one turned out to be a little more complicated than I was expecting because of the fraction. But the real thing I want you guys to get out of this is that you plug in your y, your m,